Yes, sir. Welcome back to Talking Nets, episode 90. 90 is super easy. I'm a 90s baby, a 90s kid. My fiance was born in 1990. My sister was born in 1990. Everybody loves the 90s and everybody loves the Nets and Talking Nets. Keith McPherson and Hudson Flynn joining you on Thursday, about 4 hours after the trade deadline. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what the Nets did or didn't do. We're going to talk about the games we played this week and play some voicemails and get right up out of here. Hudson Flynn, say what's up to the people.
Man, what's up to the people? I'm excited for this episode. We got a lot of energy coming in because there's so many things to talk about. We have obviously the trade deadline. Did the Nets do the right thing by standing pat? What are we going to do at the buyout deadline? And then we also have James Harden, tries to tough it out for 2 games. Nash doesn't let him play the second game. Knicks get rocked. But Alize Johnson becomes the best player in Brooklyn Nets history. We got a lot to talk about, and I'm not going to, stall too much at the top. Let's get right into it, Keith.
All right, so we'll get right into it, starting with our Twitter. You should be following us on Twitter, and you should know that 90% of the tweets on our Twitter come from Hudson Flynn, but they don't
voice
include.
Of Nets Twitter.
Oh, Hudson Flynn is now the voice of Nets Twitter. He should be tagging some of these tweets with an HF, right? So a lot of talk was around Spencer today. And Hudson said, if Spencer gets traded, we're really going to be rooting for 4 teams. And I saw some cranky old Nets fans, mostly like those anonymous Nets fans with just like the B logo as their profile picture, or Scary Hours, the big 3 as their profile picture. Like, no, we're Nets fans. We don't root for other teams. And I'm like, whoa, take it easy. Obviously, we only root for the Nets when they were the lowly Nets, and now when they're the baddest team in the NBA Nets. But what Hudson was trying to say, making jokes because we like to have fun here, he was trying to say, yo, we're rooting for our guys even when they move on, because the guys that help build this Nets culture that we love, we want to see them do well. And I replied saying, I root for Karras, but F the Pacers. I root for Jared Allen, but F the Cavaliers. And if Spencer went somewhere else, I wouldn't have been rooting for anyone else. Spencer stayed right here. And I tried to tell y'all right here on this podcast that he was in the Nets' plans. I tried to tell y'all about the tech guy with the jumper, what he means, and like his rehab, and that he'll be back in June, and that he's one of the last Mohicans. He's one of the last of the old regime. Sean Marks knows that. Steve Nash knows that. And now you know that he will be with the Brooklyn Nets and hopefully come back this season. Hudson Flynn was running the Talking Nets Twitter as the trade deadline was going on, coming down to the end. I'll pass it off to Hudson so he can say a couple things about what we saw today.
Well, I'll say now we know, though, like before the trade deadline, we didn't know how the organization was feeling about Spence. We didn't know what the internal thoughts were. But just by not trading him, that goes out and that shows you that the Nets have some faith that he is going to make some type of a contribution, whether that's opting back in, whether that's coming back for the season. Sean Marks, not a nostalgic guy. He has torn apart this team to make it what it is today. He built it up. He put all that blood, sweat, and tears into making it the fun, 2018 Brooklyn Nets with D'Lo, and then he tore that shit down and built it into the powerhouse that it is now. He has no care for your nostalgia. So that's why when I saw that he did not trade Spencer Dinwiddie at the trade deadline, when there were offers, when everybody was reporting that a lot of teams were very interested in getting Spencer Dinwiddie onto their team, the Nets didn't trade him. They kept him solid. They kept him in their plans because that's what he is. He's in their plans. And whether they know and they talked to him and asked, are you staying? And he said yes. Whether they think in his rehab he can come back for the playoffs, the Nets are going to get some type of benefit out of having Spencer Dinwiddie on this team, or else they wouldn't have kept him. So that's really, really heartening for me, because we've been beating the drum all season that Spence is in the plan. Spence is going to come back. Spence is going to either, is going to opt in. He's going to play in the playoffs. It's going to be great. He's going to win 6th Man of the Year next year, all that stuff. And now we have some of that validation. So I'm just excited to see where he goes forward. And I'm excited to watch the next workout video he drops, because pretty soon they're going to be on the court. And I'm excited to see that.
I tried to tell y'all, this is a former 6th Man of the Year. He can come off the bench and get buckets. Some people are talking about him playing off the ball and, what's the right fit? And he doesn't fit with this team. He was a starter on this team. This season started and he was starting. And then he got hurt. And it's like, y'all forgot about Dre. Same with KD. It's like, did y'all forget KD is on this team? We should want for nothing as Nets fans. KD is coming back. Kyrie, who took a leave for his birthday, we all thought, and then we learned today might be a baby on the way. Congrats, Kyrie, if that's the case. 29 years old, having his second kid. Please step away from basketball and go tend to your family and the things that are important in life. But back to the trade deadline and Spencer. Spencer wasn't going anywhere, man. He didn't want to go anywhere. He helped build this culture. He helped build this thing. He wants to see it all the way through, and I really hope that he does come back and rejoin this team in the playoffs. And whatever he can give us, he can give us. Another thing I saw on Twitter today was the name Otto Porter. And Hudson threw out Otto Porter after the moves went down. Nets Twitter, we're greedy. There's people on Nets Twitter thinking, oh, maybe we can get Otto Porter. We should monitor that. A 3-and-D wing that can shoot 45% from three would be perfect for this team. And my response was like, do Nets fans really care about Otto Porter? I know we've gotten everybody that we've wanted in the last 2 years. I forget who I was talking about. Was like, well, we should monitor it because we've gotten everybody we've wanted in the last 24 months. And I'm like, what? Like, we have a great team and we have a lot of great players on this team. And the next step for this team is to develop chemistry. We don't got to keep shaking it up. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Hudson, tell us what you were thinking when you put out there some of the Otto Porter stuff, and then that got Nets Twitter going. That got Nets Twitter going before it was even after 12 noon. I'm like, here we go. Everybody relax.
I thought free engagements.
Interaction, retweets, likes.
Look, as soon as that trade went down and I saw someone that Nets Twitter kind of had a little bit of buzz about, I was like, okay, let's amplify this. Let's see what people are thinking. Because at the end of the day, this is Talking Nets. This isn't Nets Analytics pod. This is not Nets Beat Reporters pod. This is the pod of the fans. Right. So I wanted to see what Nets Twitter, what Nets fans were thinking about someone who they had there had been murmurs about maybe getting bought out. And of course, there was a big reaction. Now, at the same time, do I personally think that Otto Porter is going to end up on the Nets? No, I do not. All the reports have been that he's going to stay on the Magic for at least a little while longer. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to question anything that's happened today or anything that will happen in the future, because in Sean Marks, who we trust, he has never led us astray. There has always been a plan. We've always been following a path that he laid out. And if Otto Porter is in the plans, great. If he's not, great. If Andre Drummond is in the plans, amazing. If he's not, that's good too. Because at the same time that the Nets are talking about this and doing all this stuff, like, who are they going to get at the trade deadline? We're winning games. And we're going out and waiting for people to get healthy. We had 6 people on the injury report in that Jazz game. We have a lot to talk about with that Jazz game, obviously. And Sean Marks is working on the edges. And we're going to talk about Alize Johnson, but there's always been a plan. And Sean Marks is following that plan, and he's going to find the improvements where the Nets need them if he thinks he needs them. But there's no reason to just make moves for the sake of making moves, which is what I feel like a lot of Nets fans are thinking. They were thinking, we're a competitor, we're a contender, we're going to win the chip. And people who win the chip make trade deadline moves. But the Nets are a complete team. Our trade deadline, to take a page directly out of Brian Cashman's book, is getting Kevin Durant back from injury. That is our big trade deadline acquisition, because at the end of the day, and when he went down, he was an MVP candidate. So let's get MVP KD back on this team.
Maybe that's part of it too. Me being a Yankee fan, I'm used to the Yankees just seeing the trade deadline and passing on it. And then when Brian Cashman is asked in the media, so Brian, why didn't you make any moves at the deadline? Why didn't you try to acquire some arms to bolster this bullpen or rotation? He starts going back to who's on the roster, who's getting healthy, and who's coming back. All right, we got a ton of voicemails, which is a good thing. So I got to start running through them. The first 2 I'm going to play are about the trade deadline before we speak any more about that. Cold like Minnesota, our guy, Louie.
Yo, Keith, Hudson, Louie here from Minnesota. I got a question and a comment. My question is, I want to know you guys' thoughts about the deadline. So in the next pod, I want to hear about that. And 2, I just want to say, from my standpoint, I'm very happy that we did not make a move, as in a big move. It hurts chemistry to keep bringing people in. I think we're good. That Alize Johnson kid is something. Knowing Sean Marks and the Nets coaching staff, they'll do the right thing with him. It'd be nice to bring another big in, and I feel like that's all we really need. I'm glad we have Joe for another 4 years. I just realized that. We're good. I know you guys are real Nets fans, so we shouldn't feel shattered by any of this drama going on in the East. We're all good. Just want to know your guys' thoughts.
I'm good.
Remember
I'm
when
chilling.
we traded for James Harden? I think we're good.
That was the move of the year. No, we don't need to trade at the trade deadline. We made the trade 13 games in for James Harden. Louis, appreciate you showing love, bro. Let's go to another Talking Nets fam. Our guy Richie calling. Let's see. Do I have Richie's voicemail queued up? Yes, I do. No, let's play this one first. This one's short.
My thoughts on the trade deadline is, I'm kind of mad that we didn't get anyone because we could use some depth, but it's all right. Hopefully we'll be good, since Kyrie's out and stuff. So I feel like we should really use someone.
I'm assuming that's a young man.
Let me just address something. I'm talking peer to peer. I assume he's my age.
Or younger, yes.
Or maybe, who knows? Maybe, or older, who knows? First off, we know when Kyrie's coming back. People have been saying that in our We Support Kyrie comments. Like, oh, is Kyrie going to disappear? No, he's not. No, shut up. Shut up, stupid. No, he's not. Kyrie is coming back after the Pistons game. Let's move forward. That's not a worry. The Nets have some areas that they could improve in. Also have some areas that they don't need to improve in. Don't need to blow anything up to fix what's not broken. I love this Nets team. And as long as they're winning, and they are, I got no worries.
Yeah, we damn sure don't need to trade for someone because Kyrie isn't here. He's coming back. And I don't know how many people I've told. I'm like, you guys don't think that the Nets are fully aware of what he's doing? This is the second leave. And you think the Nets didn't know about him taking these family leaves before they signed him? I'm pretty sure I heard it's in his contract. I'm pretty sure it's something that is not a surprise to the organization. So got to get off that with Kyrie. Like, people are still shocked. This is the guy that comes on the court and does things you see no one else do. This is the guy that can give you 30 to 40 depending on the night. As a shooting guard, he could do whatever he wants, in my opinion. Just be there when it counts. And right now it counts, but it's not really that serious that he misses this 3-game road trip. Okay, two more voicemails from TN fam about the trade deadline. I'm trying to see which one's next. There's 8 voicemails.
Hi, my name is Hassan. I think that the Nets, I'm a big Nets fan. I think the Nets did a smart job not rushing a deal for Spencer before the trade deadline. I think it's smart to wait till the offseason. And I also think that there's a lot of great buyout candidates, so there wasn't really any pressure to make a move. Thanks. Bye.
TN fam is smart.
They listen to Talking Nets.
They listen to the podcast. They know what to say. They know what they're coming on the podcast, and they're really just giving us a great echo chamber. I love it.
And yeah, I think I put on Instagram, I said, the Nets did nothing. We didn't gain anyone. More importantly, we didn't lose anyone. Sometimes just staying put when you already have the number 2 team in the East, when you already have the team that won 17 out of their last 20 games. Come on. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like I said, we aren't lacking. We aren't wanting for anything. I know y'all wanted a center. I know y'all wanted Andre Drummond. Let's talk about that. That's still a possibility. Do you think that Andre Drummond lands with your Brooklyn Nets, Hudson?
Would be cool, but if he doesn't, all right, we move. I really, honestly, yes, we have all of our problems with DJ, and yes, he's not very good at basketball, but they're slowly phasing out his minutes. They're slowly taking him down. They're slowly giving Nick Claxton the 30 minutes a night that we all wanted. Yeah. And when Nick Claxton's on the court, the Nets win. So no worries, really. If we get him, that's awesome. If not, more minutes for Nick Claxton, and win or lose, watching Nick Claxton is a fun time.
And who was monitoring that? I slowly was watching the minutes change as Clax came back and he got his legs back up under him and showed us that he's not like a rookie, even though he's only played 30 games. He's a beast. I was monitoring how many minutes DJ was playing versus Clax. And as we were getting close to Claxton surpassing his minutes, like I said, it don't matter that he doesn't start. DJ gets to start because he's the veteran. Clax gets to close, and now he's consistently getting more minutes than DJ, and I don't think that's going to ever go back at this point.
What's going on, Talking Nets? This is Rich, straight out of Brooklyn, Flatbush area. The deadline kind of been dry as far as I'm concerned. There's been some good moves, but as far as we're concerned, Andre Drummond just got bought out, so we'll see where that goes. Spencer Dinwiddie had tweeted something, a sad face, and he put something on Instagram too. I'm not sure about that, man. I didn't want to trade him because he's one of my favorite players, of course. He's been so important to Brooklyn, but at the same time, you know, I've been talking to other Nets fans. They wanted the defensive wing for him, but I guess he's staying. I guess so. And the deadline, Sean Marks hasn't really been known for making big moves at the deadline as far as he's been with us. But hey, we'll see where this Drummond thing goes. But shout out Talking Nets, man. Love your pod.
Richie Rich, Brooklyn. Agreed. I don't have anything to add or disagree with what Richie said.
No notes.
No notes.
He went out.
Drummond,
He said facts. Drummond, maybe. Who knows? 3 and D wing. Sure, fine. Why not? Spence is good. Keep him. Love it.
Cool by me. We've got a couple more voicemails, but we're running on time here. And to stay on time here, we got to talk about these games. Hey, let's get into the games. There's only 2 games. Talking Nets, we give you a pod after every 2 games because we're not trying to be on the pod talking about 3 games, especially this week with these late night games. You know your boy Keith gets sleepy. I am tired. I'm over 30. Once y'all young boys hit 30, you're going to love your bed. I got a nice Nectar mattress. I love my bed, but I stayed out of my bed this week to cover the Blazers game and the Jazz game. The Blazers game is what we're going to talk about right now. That was fun. Game 44 out of 72. Your Brooklyn Nets beat the Blazers in Portland, Oregon, 116-112 Tuesday night. And man, what a time. James Harden says, yeah, my neck, my back, my neck and my back, I'm going to play. I love to hoop. There's nothing I'd rather do. If I can go, I'm going to go. Against Dame, against Melo, against CJ, and it's Cantor in them. Yeah, I'm going to play because we need to get that dub, and we don't need Dame to go off for 60. I'm going to play. I'm going to stir the drink, stir the pot. I'm going to do what I got to do for us to get the win. And I love that game. It was a gritty win. We only won by 4 points. And in the first half, first off, the Nets were favored to lose. If you guys pay attention to FanDuel, DraftKings, odds, you should, as a fan, even if you don't bet. I deleted the apps. I don't bet anymore, but I do like to see what Vegas thinks about these games. And I'm pretty sure the Blazers were 3-point favorites at home. So Vegas was expecting the Nets to lose, and a lot of people lost money on that. I don't know if they thought Harden wasn't going to play. We saw that guy, forget the reporter's name, that he said the Nets are a mess. KD has.
I want to give him the clout. Don't give him the clout. I
won't say his name. We posted him. He's like, KD ain't played in weeks. Kyrie's on a personal leave. Harden's out with a sore neck.
The Nets are a mess.
Rip City. Yeah, right.
Rip City.
Yeah, right.
Rip City to Portland.
Man,
honestly, that was a fun game.
Go for it.
Yeah, I'm just going to say that was a fun game. Like, we saw a lot of good things. We saw the grit and toughness of James Harden. We saw Jeff Green put up 20 on 50% shooting, looking to end fools at the rim, working in transition, getting some and ones, looking great. Joey Buckets, a 50% shooting night from the field and from 3 in general. Just another great performance. James Harden, what can you say? A career high, tied his career high in assists again, 17 points. Even when the scoring isn't there, he shot 7 of 24 from the field. Even when the scoring isn't there, he runs this team. And we saw that he really does run this team in that Jazz game. 17 assists. It's just masterful watching him play. It's just so amazing how on the nights when he can't score, he can still be the best player on the court through other ways. And that's just what makes him different. Also played 40 minutes, still leading the NBA in minutes. Crazy stuff. But moving past all of that, moving past the, one a month, all right, TLC game, Nick Claxton, I don't know how many more coming out parties he's going to have, but 16 points, 9 rebounds. That's a career high. Looking for his first double-double. Didn't quite get it. Shot 8 of 10 from the field. And his defense on guards should scare the rest of the NBA. Things he was doing, stepping out and guarding CJ and Dame on the perimeter and blocking their shots and moving in transition and running the floor. It's something that you don't see from players that have only played in 30 career games. It's something that you don't see in people who are 7 feet tall. It's just something that Sean Marks found, and I don't know how he found. I don't know how it was missed. Like his parents said, the biggest secret in the NBA. It's just crazy the things that he's doing, the defense that he can play, the way he moves his feet. And honestly, whenever he's on the court, it's must-see TV. I find myself watching him more than I find myself watching James Harden and Kyrie play when they're all on the court at the same time, just because of the things he does and how impressive it is. And, I'll let you take it away, but my takeaway from this game is Nick Claxton, again, as we all have known, is just seriously the real deal.
He's like a diamond in the rough. Can't take my eyes off the guy. Honestly, my boy Dane texted me and he said, yo, you said it on the pod, but yeah, man, like Nick Claxton is a jewel, like a rare find. And we hit him like a jewel, like a rare find. We didn't let him come out too soon. Like, how many coming out parties does he need to have? When I did my post-game 1 minute thoughts after the game, I didn't even mention him till the end, because now it's just becoming regular. I'm not surprised anymore. And I think someone tried to reply to a Talking Nets tweet to be like, oh, y'all boys just finding out about Nick Claxton. I'm like, no, go back and check our podcast from 2019. Go back to last year and check our feed. And they're like, no need. I'm like, don't come over here with that, like, oh, you're late shit. We're not late. We've been new. And I love to see Clax, like, just confident as ever. And like you said, switching on guards. Dane texted me. He's like, Claxton just checked Dame 2 straight possessions in the clutch for no points. I said, ain't that wild, bro? I'm like, I was scared. At first I'm seeing him switch and I'm like, it's Dame time. Like, it's Damian Lillard on his home court and it's a close game. I'm like, oh, I don't know. Clax, not afraid of the moment. In the post game, he said, my first game, my debut, I think was in 2019 in Portland. And he'll remember that forever. And he said he remembered being on the court with CJ, and he took what he remembered from then about his game, man. And Clax is the man. I actually connected with someone that knows Clax on YouTube. Her name's Erica. From the small picture I could see of her, she looked pretty fine. And she was saying that Clax isn't into his DMs. He isn't into the Instagram thotties, and like he's focused. And I'm trying to get him on the podcast. She's like, just reach out to him, see what he says, this and that. I'm like, man, I'm trying to get him on the podcast, and I'm trying to see who twists up his dreads so I can get right for the summer. But what else from that game? Oh, before Hudson went, when I said, honestly, as soon as I heard Kyrie wasn't going to play on this road trip against 2 of the best teams in the West, I was like, don't play Harden then. And then we saw in the Wizards game him take that shoulder to the literal cheek like an NFL hit. I'm like, yo, let him chill. He doesn't chill. This guy is Iron Man. He comes out for warmups. He's good to go. He goes, and like, not just goes, he goes for 17 assists. Like, seeing that in the box score is just like 17 assists and 25 points. And the thing is, he could have chilled, right? And when you talk about MVPs, when you talk about the most valuable player is most noticeable in absence. That game last night against Utah, he wasn't playing. You could tell the Nets look completely different. I'm glad we didn't show our hand with Harden even a little bit. And of course, we can't show our hand to the number 1 team in the West that we potentially wouldn't see until the NBA Finals. And you can't show your hand without KD and Kyrie. But I just like, they didn't even put him on the court. Good, let him chill. I hope he doesn't play against the Pistons. What else do I have from this game? Okay, the bench. We're starting to see more out of Blake Griffin, a veteran. 8 points off the bench, 5 rebounds. Like I said, defense is greater than dunks. He's going to help there. TLC, Bruce Brown got poked in the eye, and TLC had to get up and get in the game sooner than I would have liked. Most Nets fans probably would have liked. And he did his thing. He had 11 points. Lil TJ, Tyler Johnson. He's become serviceable. I don't have any like doubts or worries when he's in the game. Jeff Green has to get love for this Portland game. Jeff Green had 20 points in this Portland game. It's like Jeff Green was hitting threes, backing guys down. Joe Harris was hitting open threes. These are veteran guys that understand, hey, Harden is banged up. Kyrie didn't make the trip. Obviously, we don't have KD. We need to step up, and they did. When we need a spark, I've noticed this. Like, if Kyrie isn't there, Joe Harris is on. Joe Harris has off nights when Kyrie is going for 40. But when Kyrie isn't playing, Joe Harris is hitting his shots, and he's making plays. Bruce Brown had a one-handed dunk that, like, got me up out of my seat. Like, I was half asleep, But when he dunked, I stood up like, oh, Bruce Brown, beast. And like, I'm just happy for Bruce Brown. Like, he's the type of guy, any way you want it, you can get it. Does he have to be a defender? Does he have to score points? Does he have to dish? Does he, not play that many minutes, or is he going to start? He is a Swiss Army knife for this team, and I love to see it because we were on the Bruce Brown train. We were on the Bruce Brown train really because we got Musa up out of here. So once we got Musa up out of here, we're like, anybody's better. Then we looked into it, and we were like, oh, this guy checked hard. And when he was in Detroit, we looked at his Miami stuff. I was like, he's a great athlete. He's a good guy to have on the team. And in this game, Claxton mentioned 16 points, 9 rebounds, played 22 minutes, which is 2 minutes more than DJ. There's no looking back from here. Let's move on to the next game, which was a loss. So we don't like to talk too much about the losses. I will throw it right now to a voicemail before we get into this Utah Jazz game. What did LeBron say? Like, oh, we don't really be thinking about Utah, When you do think about Utah, it's like they're a good team, but they're not a threat. Like, I don't really think about them as like one of the better teams in the NBA. I know they are, but let's play his voicemail and then we'll talk about it.
Hey, fellas, calling after Utah beat the brakes out of us without our stars. My name is Georgie, and I'm newly enlisted in the Air Force. Since 2020, during quarantine, I fell in love with basketball and decided to root for the Nets. So I guess you could say I represent the new generation of Nets fans, even though I might be a few years older than Hudson. My question is, where do you guys get your day-to-day Nets news and like active roster updates? Any accounts you both personally recommend? Love the pod. Keep it up, guys.
Georgie, appreciate you calling out there in the service. We appreciate your service. Hudson, where do you get?
That's a good question, though. That is a good question because we got a very specific set of post notifications on for our Twitter because we, as it turns out, are not actually permitted to view the Brooklyn Nets PR Twitter account for whatever reason. Very confusing. No, don't know why. All the other PR accounts are public, but that's fine. So we have some post notifications, and I'll go right to them. Of course, Malika Andrews on the ESPN beat, always asking great questions. We have the Yes Network. They post a lot of good stuff. They don't necessarily post it the quickest because they're the Yes Network, so they have to kind of wait and they have to, make sure it's right with the graphics and everything. Some other good guys. Matt Brooks, friend of the podcast, had him on a couple of times. He's great. He posts a lot of good things along with some really good film study content. Who else am I missing, Keith?
Nets Daily.
Nets Daily. Christian Winfield.
You said Hoop Central, NBA Central. Obviously, Shams and Woj on Twitter. Me personally, I set Google alerts for the Brooklyn Nets. So anytime there's a news article about the Brooklyn Nets, it's like curated into one email and they send them daily. And they're like, here's the articles to read about the Brooklyn Nets. And that also helps me just stay up on what's going on with the team. Other than that, hoopshype.com. I like hoopshype.com. That's for like the whole NBA, not just the Nets. But if you're a Nets fan, you should be paying attention to the whole NBA because now this Nets team has 3 of the best players in the NBA, and we're getting that national attention, that international attention, that attention from the whole league. You should be tuned in to everything going on in the league.
Sideline sources as well on Instagram. If you look for someone on IG,
sideline sources on Instagram is great. Yes.
But yeah, that's about it. I think that we definitely hit on everyone. That's good though. If you want to be like, I don't know, like plugged in, and that's something that I learned when I like really started covering the Nets. Because before that, I would just go on Twitter and I would, read the news articles, but I wasn't as plugged in, obviously, as I am now. And it's good to have those notifications on because when you get on things first, there's a it's a good feeling to it to be able to talk about it, to know about it, to spend more time digesting it. I remember, like we talked about earlier, when the Bruce Brown trade happened, I saw that right away and I was like, okay, no more Musa, but let's see. And then I was able to check up on Bruce Brown, and then I became a fan pretty quickly. And I think, as a podcast, as me personally, we were really some of the first people that were hype on Bruce Brown. We were really early on the Bruce Brown trade, just seeing what he could do defensively and knowing that was going to be a need for the Nets. So definitely hit up all those accounts. Make sure you're early on it. And of course, follow us on Twitter because we are always on top of everything.
No, but for real, just follow us on Twitter and follow us on Instagram. We just broke 2,000 follows on Instagram. I'm starting to create more videos, reels, stories for that. And honestly, if you want to know what's going on with the Nets, we are on it. Like as soon as something happens, we tweet about it. And a lot of times we take what we put on Twitter and put it on our Instagram. If you follow us and you set up post notifications for our Instagram and our Twitter, you will be a smart Nets fan. You will be a smart basketball fan, NBA fan, as far as knowing what's going on in the league. Okay, here is another voicemail. This guy called last week, and I thought what he was saying was that we're waking up in first place. No, he was saying we're waking up and watching First Take. I don't know if you guys do this, but I wake up in the morning, I turn on Sports Center. Some people turn on Undisputed. Some people turn on Get Up, First Take, First Things First. So let's run it back. You called with a revised voicemail.
This is Finn from Jersey. I'm calling in to revise my earlier point about Undisputed and First Take. Just wanted to take a moment to step back and appreciate being a fan since I was born. Going from watching Jordan Farmar hit the buzzer beater in 2011 to beat the Clippers, watching Blake Griffin play to watching him dunk last night. Insane to see it go full circle. I just want to know what your guys' take is on like living in the moment, like I said earlier, you know?
Jordan Farmar. What's your take, Hudson?
Memory.
How are you living in the moment being a 19-year-old Nets fan who is the voice of Nets Twitter, has a Nets podcast, and every day everyone is talking Nets, and there's so much going on in the Nets world?
Shoot, I'm being awake in the moment. I'm not sleeping in the moment, ruining my sleep cycle, running these Twitter, watching these lake blowouts all the way until the end. But no, it's great. It's something that I haven't really been able to experience from any of the teams that I like. Obviously, the Giants had those 2 early Super Bowls, but they were never that dominant. The Yankees, for as great as they've been, they've never been this clear runaway, favorite, don't need any pieces type team to win. And it's just kind of a crazy thing to experience, to be able to sit down every day and watch the best basketball being played in the NBA, the best basketball player, at least according to Charles Barkley. Maybe we agree with him on something finally, in James Harden. And it's just nice to sit back and enjoy it. And I still sometimes don't even fully believe that Kevin Durant is on this team. Like, he's been on the injury report, and, he took all that time to come back. Like, sometimes I have to sit down and remind myself, like, wow, we're still getting KD back. This team is still going to get better. And it's just about, like, just appreciating it and watching it for, like, the beautiful basketball that it is, whether it's focusing on the stars or watching Nick Claxton, or rooting for, like, Alize Johnson to, make the best on his 10-day. It's just exciting to be a Nets fan. And I don't know, for me, it's just appreciating all the little things and really looking at just how far we've come and how far we still have to go with this team.
Yeah, I stay in the moment looking back at that picture of myself. I think I was 13, and on picture day, I decided to wear my Jason Kidd jersey to school. And back in that time, when Jason Kidd landed on the Nets, he was everything and ended up taking us to the finals. And I remember being a kid and losing the finals, and it was so deflating and confusing. And I didn't know half as much as I knew now back then, but it was like a defeat that sticks with you as a Nets fan, and you want to get back to the mountaintop, and you don't know when that's going to be, but you quietly root for the team. You watch the games. You turn the games off early when it doesn't go your way. You yell, you curse. You see people hating on the Nets, ragging on the Nets in past years. And then little by little, we started to get better. He mentioned Jordan Farmar, Brooke Lopez. And, I was at playoff games in 2013 and 2015. And, I've watched this team evolve and this culture build. And I thought that it would get here, but there's no way to imagine this. There's no way I could have physically imagined what we're in right now. So also living in a moment is with talking Nets. Like Hudson said, how far we've come. I don't know if he was saying that just with the team, but also with this brand we've built. It wasn't easy. It wasn't always supported. It wasn't always helped out. It wasn't always easy. There wasn't always people listening to the podcast, calling the podcast, following us on Twitter. Like, it started from literal, like, nothing, zero. And I think it's got a trajectory to be pretty big, which, I'm proud of. So that keeps me grounded in it and in the moment. And then also, like, being a fan of, like, the Yankees, which is, obviously my other favorite team, it's day and night. Someone asked me, are you a bigger Yankee fan than you are a Nets fan? I said, I guess, yeah, because it's tied to joy. Like, I've seen much more victories and wins and good times and postseason appearances with the Yankees. But now I think the Nets are creating that culture that is going to be, we are playoffs, like they said in 2015, and one goal, like now we're actually doing that, and we have the players and the talent, and people want to come here, and we've got like 7 different jerseys, and everyone's buying them, and everyone wants to be a Nets fan, and people are asking me stuff about the Nets, and I'm like, man, it was quiet for the Nets. We deserve this light because it used to be so dark, and that's why when we play a game like we did last night, and we're looking at our bubble Nets, and we're looking at these guys that we hype up and root for. You know, I went into that game thinking, yo, this is going to be fun. This is the game that Nets Twitter is tuning in. It's a nationally televised game on ESPN, so the world is watching, but Nets Twitter is looking to see what Reggie Perry does, what Chris Chioza does, what Tyler Johnson does. And that was fun, but then we got smacked, so it wasn't that fun. Let's talk about it. Game 45 out of 72. The Nets lose to the Jazz 118-80. Ooh, 30. Got beat by 30 Wednesday night in Utah. Stayed up and watched that whole game. I think I text Hudson like, yo, I'm about to take it down. But why could I not take it down? Because one, Alize Johnson stepped into that game like he had one shot, one moment to seize every opportunity. And he did. He didn't let it slip. He captured it. Hudson put out a tweet before the game, and I think he said, or maybe in the beginning of the game when he got his first buckets, he said something like he's going for a 20-for-20 game. Then Richard Jefferson roasting him on the broadcast, calling him Lamar Jackson. He's saying he might go for a 20-for-20 game, and I'm like, yo, I got to stay up, because if Hudson called it and Richard Jefferson called it, we could do something with that. I was so amped to see a 10-day show up and do that. We've talked on this podcast about how Steve Nash catches these Pokemon, and he's got to really evolve them. And before they step on the court, he's got to train them. He's got to be the very best like no one ever was before he unleashes his new Pokemon. Well, this guy showed up in Utah, met Steve Nash in the morning, and was on the court getting buckets. He had 23 points and 15 rebounds. Last night was the Alize Johnson game. Even in a loss, the Brooklyn Nets win. We have a guy that came from the G League who people said could have been an MVP in the G League, and all he wanted to do last night was show that he belonged, and he got to do that on the national stage. He put on for your Brooklyn Nets. Hudson, what were you thinking about that Jazz game? It didn't matter, but it did.
I was thinking that Alize Johnson, he did that in a blowout, but he did that against the starters. He played starters minutes and was only a -3, I believe, at the finish. And one thing about that Jazz game was that the Jazz, for whatever reason, left their starters in for like most of the game. So this was good experience. And this was him going up against Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell, like all of these good players. So I don't feel like I'm reading into it too much when I say, whether it's on the Nets or elsewhere, Alize Johnson has a place in this league. And honestly, I hope he has a place on this Nets team, because you do not grab 15 boards by accident in the NBA. That's not a fluke. That's not a one-off, especially when in the G League you were averaging, I think, 13 1/3 rebounds per game. Like, if you know how to rebound, you know how to rebound. That translates. And they were talking about it actually on the ESPN broadcast about how much rebounding translates. And, you know, those 23 points, that's not really going to come every game, obviously, because he's not going to get the minutes to do that. He's not going to get the opportunity, because why would he? But those rebounds, that's a spot that, like we've always talked about, the Nets can improve in. And if he's given the chance and he's given the opportunity, and I really hope he is, alongside James Harden, if he plays in this Pistons game, I think we might see something from Alize Johnson that we didn't see from Shump, from Norvell Pell, from Noah Vonleh, all of our 10-day section on the championship DVD. It's just exciting to see, and it's cool to see that someone can come in and make the most of this opportunity in a way that we haven't seen a lot from the Nets, because we have given so many people opportunities and they have not stepped up like that. And I'm just excited that he did, and I really hope he could do it again against the Pistons.
He didn't waste any time trying to impress. He didn't waste any time making sure that you knew his name. It's not Alize. It's not Alize. It's like Biggie said, the Moet and Alize keep me tipsy. Girls used to diss me. Now they write letters because they miss me. Alize, y'all know about Alize. It's a drink. So Alize Johnson, he will be in the championship DVD. When the Nets championship DVD comes out, there's going to be a chapter called 10 Days. And in that 10 days chapter, they will speak on the Brooklyn Nets conquest for a chip that featured 10-day contracts with guys like Iman Shumpert, Andre Roberson, Norvell Pelle, and dare I say Noah Vonleh, who never actually even stepped on the court for the Brooklyn Nets. And then we get a guy like Alize Johnson who plays against the number one team in the West. And he says, hold on. I want to get a ring and I belong here and I'm going to play. And yeah, we might get smacked. This game was over in the first quarter, but it became the Alize Johnson game. And it also became the Lamar Jackson game because everybody was throwing memes of Alize Johnson and Lamar Jackson, and Richard Jefferson Nets After Dark was roasting him, and they were killing it, man. And, you know, this was our largest deficit of the season at half. And, you know, we were getting smoked, but who cares, yo? You can't look at that game and be serious about that game. And we don't really have to talk much about it. We were playing without the entire big three. What did you expect to happen missing 3 out of 5 starters? I am just happy that Alize Johnson balled out. Chris Chioza hit some threes. Reggie Perry hit some threes. Nick Claxton stepped back and hit a 3 with confidence. And you got a game out of these guys. Joe Harris played 5 minutes, and they're like, that's enough, Joe. We don't need you to do that.
That's not what the game was for. The game was not for people who we knew things about. It was for seeing what we had. And we would be, I think, remiss to not mention that Reggie Perry showed us some stuff.
Yeah.
Improvement. He went out there. Obviously, he was overshadowed by our guy Alize, but he went out there and he showed some improvement. He showed himself hitting some threes. It was a good game for him to go and show that he made clear improvements during that time that he spent in the G League, which he really balled out in. So I was excited to see him. He put up 12 points, 2 of 4 from 3, 4 of 9 from the field, 8 rebounds and assists. A good game from him. That's exciting from him. And, you know, like we've talked about, Steve Nash, he develops these players. Sean Marks, he gets these development players. You know, Ime Udoka, everybody else who's, you know, involved on the Nets, the development squad. They create these players into greater things than when they arrive that have this great potential. And we saw it with Nick Claxton, and I hope we see it with our guy Reggie Perry, because it's clear that he has the potential. He can shoot outside, he can rebound, he brings energy, he brings hustle. And if we can refine that and, you know, kind of, you know, sharpen that into a fine tipped spear, I'm excited to see what he can do. And I think we saw last night that he can do some great things.
Yeah, I'm going to take a page out of my guy Joe's McFly's book. I'm wearing a Seriously Not Serious pinstripe strong tee. I was in the office. This is what I had on today. But Joe's McFly, he always does this on pinstripe strong. He says, you know, we had him on an old episode. So right now, this is what I want you to do. Pause this episode right now. Hit pause. Go back. Search for that episode. I want you to search for episode 68, Reggie Perry on Talking Nets. Go listen to that. And then after you're done listening to that, come back and listen to this. We had him on here. And he's a guy that I heard Bruce Brown say he was killing in camp. He got a chance to play because we were short on guys, whatever. They were trying to get him in there. He went to the G League, dominated. He came back. You guys have seen him. Someone asked if he was going to play last night. I'm like, yeah. No, someone asked if he was with the team. I'm like, yeah, you don't see him on the sidelines. He's been on the sidelines the last, few games. And he came out and he played well and showed us something last night. And he is a rookie. And we talked about him being a rookie with no summer league, no training camp, thrown into the fire, and he's done nothing but respond. I like the look of him coming out of the SEC and Nick Claxton coming out of the SEC. Back-to-back years, the Nets draft bigs, and these guys are contributing. So that's all I've got from the Jazz game. The Nets are 30-15, and nothing is wrong with this team, man. We're just fine. Good times, and we've got one more voicemail and one review to read, and then we're out of here. This one is great. This is going to turn into story time.
Hey, guys, this is Daniel from Savannah, Georgia. Native New Yorker. I've been a Nets fan since the New Jersey days. Just wanted to represent. It used to be lonely as a Nets fan out there, but now everybody's hopping in the bandwagon. I'll give you my earliest memory as a Nets fan was driving from Long Island to New Jersey to see the Nets and my uncle's friends. My uncle used to take me, but his friends got too hammered, and I was 16, just got my learner's permit. They were like, hey, Daniel's got his learner's permit. We drank too much. Let's have him drive from New Jersey through the tunnels, through Manhattan, on the Long Island Expressway, back home. So been repping the Nets since the early days of 2001, I think. So, yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Just shout outs.
Shit, drunk driving would have been safer than that. Oh, my God. Dangerous.
It's funny you say that. How old did he say he was?
He said he was 16 in 2001, trying to drive on the tunnels, trying to on the long. Oh my God, that scares me more than anything else. That sounds scary as hell. Oh my God.
It's funny. And he said he's from Savannah, Georgia, where John Boy Media was just down in Savannah, Georgia. You guys should go watch the Savannah Bananas and what they did in Savannah, Georgia this past weekend on the John Boy Media YouTube channel is great. But I have a story almost identical to that one that we just got from Daniel. When I was 16, this isn't a Nets story, but it's almost the same type of thing. When I was 16, my uncle and his friend wanted to go to Washington, D.C. I think it was the Verizon Center back then. I think it's still the Verizon Center.
Was. Nah, they just changed it, but you're good.
I don't know. I think they might have changed the name. I think it was the Verizon Center back then.
It was.
And we were going to see the Sweet 16. We missed the first game. I don't remember who played. But the next game that we got to see UConn take on George Mason. And if you guys remember correctly, George Mason was the 11th seed, and they knocked off UConn. And George Mason is not far from Washington, D.C., so a lot of their fans were in there. It was epic. For me as a 16-year-old, I watched every second of that game. I watched the George Mason fans. I want to say Rudy Gay was on that team, maybe Ben Gordon. Who else from UConn was on that team? They had a stacked team. And I'm sitting there like I'm watching NCAA March Madness history. It's funny that it's March and I get to tell this story. I haven't thought of this story in years until Daniel called. But I was underage like Hudson. I never had a beer at the time like Hudson. I didn't even know anything about alcohol. So as my uncle, as my uncle and his friend kept leaving the seats, I'm like, yo, they're missing one of the greatest games in tournament history. Little did I know they were boozing up. And by the time the game ended, they're like, yo, you got your permit, right? And I'm like, me? Yeah, I got my permit. They're like, here's the keys, big dog. You got to drive. I'm like, what? They're like, you have to drive us from D.C. back to Jersey. You got it. You got it. And I'm like, I guess I was kind of scared, but I was also pumped. And it was also like a fight or flight thing. It's like, well, do I want these guys to drive me drunk, or do I want to just man up in the situation and handle it? And I did. My uncle had a big SUV, like a Ford Explorer. I'm driving from DC through Delaware, through the turnpike. I get us home. But before I get us home, we stopped twice. And the two stops we made were at liquor stores for my uncle to jump out and get a bottle of Bombay twice. He bought 2 bottles of Bombay and was drinking in the backseat because once they saw me drive at 16, they were comfortable. They're like, oh, he's going to get us home. By the time we get back to my uncle's house, my mom is standing outside. My aunt is standing outside. They are furious. They pretty much whooped their asses, told me to get in the car. And that's a family story that we only tell around holidays. I'm glad I get to tell it on Talking Nets because Daniel made me think about it.
Put him on the Beltway at 16. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's the universe connecting right there. That story came back to me. So I think that's good, and that's what we should wrap on.
Let's close it out on that. I like that.
Hell
That's a good personal energy. I love that.
Last but not least, a review. We need more reviews. We're going up. We're ticking up. Tick, tick, tick. I think we're 4.7. We've got 70 reviews. And this one came in from Will on Monday. 5 stars. He writes, great Nets podcast. Love the true Nets fans show the team. Love the true Nets fans show the team and its fans. And I guess he's referring to us as true Nets fans, which we are, even though someone said, oh, y'all fake. Y'all must be fake Nets fans rooting for Karis LeVert and Jared Allen. Like, nah, actually, like they helped us get exactly what we have right now, and we appreciate them for that.
I love it. I got to get a photo of like baby Hudson watching a Nets game when they were in it was like their first season in Brooklyn. I forget who they played, but there's a photo of like little baby Hudson. I was like 10 or 11 years old in my first Nets apparel. I gotta keep that photo on lock every time.
That's
every time someone's like, oh, these new Nets fans, I gotta make sure I have that. You already got your photo of you at picture day, so I gotta make sure I find that photo.
Do that, man, and we'll post it. Throwback Thursday. Today is Thursday. All right, so leave a voicemail. The voicemail is 201-870-0461. Write a review, subscribe, rate, and review. It helps us. We're trying to get Nick Claxton. We're trying to get Alize Johnson. I'm trying to get Kerry Kittles on the pod. And when these people's agents and managers look up the pod, they look up the ratings. And if you've got 5 ratings and they're all bad, they're not trying to come on your show. We've got the followers now. That makes sense. We need the rating. So please write us a review. Speaking of followers, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube. It's at Talkin' Nets. Search Talkin' Nets everywhere. I have to figure out why our podcast doesn't come up in the podcast app when you search Brooklyn Nets. Like,
there's got to be some kind of tag situation. I don't know what's going on.
I have the tag set up. I'm going to look into it. I'm going to talk to John Boy about it tomorrow, actually. Like, how do we get our podcast to come up when people search Brooklyn Nets? Because a couple people are like, yo, even my girl was like, when I search Brooklyn Nets, you guys should be the first podcast. I'm like, that's what I think, but that's not what happens. I know there's little things you got to finagle and play around with. But also, don't forget, you can come meet us live April 10th at Tailgate Brooklyn. Live meetup podcast, and then we're going to watch the game together. It's going to be fun. With the way the weather's trending, I'm hoping we get like a 70-degree day on that Saturday.
Don't jinx it. Don't jinx it.
Man, I would love to just be out there in a hoodie and a jersey at night, like 55, 60 degrees chilling. And it's free, and you can start booking reservations now. It's actually 2 weeks out from 2 days from now. So go on resi.com, search Tailgate Brooklyn, Saturday 410. Book yourself a table. Bring all your friends. Bring your family. They don't have to be Nets fans. It's an outdoor space. It's going to be one of the most poppin' places in Brooklyn. I'm telling you, it's all vibes. It's like an outdoor festival vibe. Pull up. Meet me in Hudson. We'll watch the Nets play the Lakers, and it's going to be a good time. This has been Talking Nets, episode 90. Keith McPherson and Hudson Flynn. Hudson, you got anything else? Oh, I didn't ask, Hudson. Where can they follow you?
They can follow me at Hudson Flynn. I usually plug the Twitter after this, but the Twitter's banging on its own. We don't need to plug that. Subscribe to the YouTube. That's been growing quicker than I even expected because we, don't do that much promotion for the YouTube. Obviously, we put it out on Twitter and stuff, but that's growing on its own. We're up past 250 subscribers, getting close to 300. Blow that up because it's great content. You get to see us. We're going to start live streaming. If you want to see some of that, that's going to come. It's all good stuff. And look, you can play it in the background just the same way you play a podcast, but then you can see Keith's face and you can make fun of me for looking like a 12-year-old.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's just the algorithm we're starting to pop up because people are liking and commenting and we're rising. So that's all good stuff. We're off tonight. And then the Nets play the Pistons Friday. And then Monday we play the Madison Squares. And then Wednesday, we run it back with the Pacers and Karis. And then we've got next Friday against the Orlando magically made their team disappear. And that's all we got, man. We're going to keep it running. This podcast went long, but I wanted it to go long. Talking, trade deadline, talking about the two games, and played like 7 voicemails. Appreciate the love. I remember when there was 0 voicemails for multiple weeks. But that means the Nets fans and the TN fam are growing. And we love you and we appreciate you. Let's go Nets. Brooklyn.
We go